Don't think I have a mic. There we go. Welcome, FDIC attendees. Welcome to FDIC 2021. We're live here in the IDEX Fire and Safety booth, booth 1823. For those of you joining us online, welcome to the best training and fire trade conference in the United States. Today, we're going to talk about auto extrication challenges with modern vehicles, and I have some very special guests I want to introduce you to.
On this part.
Starting with this gentleman here, Chief Torrance Lee, the chief of the Beaver Lane Fire Department.
Hello, everybody.
Chief Lee is a rescue specialist in addition to his responsibilities as a chief, and is a trainer in the Carolinas and travels all over the Carolinas teaching first responders the latest in techniques. Next, we have Mike McConnell, the technical lead of emergency response for Tesla. And lastly, we have Jason DeFosse, Canadian firefighter, rescue specialist and instructor, and a veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces.
Well, thank you.
So, all these gentlemen spend so much time educating first responders and working with the latest in rescue challenges. We thought it would be really beneficial to get these gentlemen together to talk about the challenges with modern vehicle rescue. So I'd like to start with Mike. Mike, I hear this question a lot. What are the biggest concerns about electric vehicles? So if we could ask you, what are some of the most common questions you're getting from first responders? And a follow-up to that, what kind of advice are you offering them for these biggest concerns they have?
Yeah, some of the big concerns and questions that I receive often through our Tesla First Responder webpage is, where are the high voltage cables located on the vehicle? What kind of risk do I have when I cut into that vehicle, cutting in a high voltage cable? And the way Tesla vehicles are designed is we intentionally put those cables out of harm's way. We make sure that it's not going to be in any harm for the vehicle owner and especially first responders. So all of our vehicles over the years, they get better and better on their design, and there's less and less high voltage cables, so there's less risk of cutting into any of those cables. Other vehicle manufacturers, there's lots of information out there through the NFPA website where you can learn about their vehicles and where the cables run on their vehicles. And we're constantly looking at the other manufacturers, see how they're setting up their vehicles. And I hope that they take lead and follow us to get those high voltage cables out of potential risk zones where you may have to do a dash roll, where you may have to cut out a B pillar or anything to get to those occupants. So those are definitely some of the heavy questions I constantly get.
Great. I've heard lots of things about the standardization of high voltage. Could you confirm for our first responders? I've heard it's always orange. Is that true?
Yeah, so for Tesla vehicles, we've had orange cables since 2008 when the Roadster came out, and we have stuck to that all these years. Some other manufacturers have been using, some are everyone's supposed to really change over to orange so that's standardized for all manufacturers and all vehicles and such. But the important thing is review first responder guides that are available from the other manufacturers, review the Tesla first responder guides, and also reach out to the OEMs. Tesla has a first responder email address. You can email firstrespondersafety@tesla.com, and more than happy to answer all your questions. I don't necessarily answer questions on the other OEMs, but I do study their vehicles, and so that way I'm aware of how they're doing their vehicles compared to how we're doing our vehicles. And Tesla likes to brag a little bit. We want to be the tip of the spear on this, but we also want those other manufacturers to get to the same level as us. So all the electric vehicles out there are safe for everyone out there. So any first responder that does have to do a rescue evolution on a vehicle, they're not going to be in harm's way.
That's great. So I saw when I had the privilege to join you at the Tesla factory, I saw some what I would consider unique frame designs that were something I didn't see in other vehicles. So if you don't mind me asking, what are some of those unique build characteristics that Tesla implements in the frame to protect battery cells and occupants that might be a little different from what we saw from traditional gas vehicles?
Yeah, so some of the things that you'll see on Tesla vehicles, if you're here back in 2019, we cut up a Model S, a Model X, and we also cut up a Model 3. And if you had a chance to see those vehicles, you would have noticed that there's a lot of focus on that rocker section. So some people call it the door sill, some people call it the rocker panel, but I'll use the Model S, for example. It's a massive extrusion. It's like as big as my head. And then within that, there's another extrusion. So it's extremely strong. Pole testing that's required by all manufacturers to crash into. That structure is so strong that even when it's completely compressed in that pole test, there's no damage that's being inflicted on that battery pack whatsoever. So the rocker is very strong on those vehicles, which is excellent for when you need to use a ram to do a push off for your dash evolution. And then also you have on the vehicles, the B pillars are extremely strong. Tesla vehicles are made out of aluminum, but we also have a lot of high strength steel that's located primarily in the B pillars, probably that extra strength. Model 3, Model Y is a unique vehicle because it's a steel vehicle. So many people are used to those, but it's also an extremely tough vehicle. And that's something we saw back in 2019, cutting up that Model 3, how strong that structure is on that vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's shift gears here for a minute. And if I could direct a question to you, Chief Lee, feel free to respond as well, Jason. So, Chief, I see you train. I've joined you in a lot of trainings. I'm kind of curious, when you look at these new vehicle construction methods, what would you say are the most significant challenges you've seen and how it's kind of changing the reaction of the tool in your hand and how it's changing your go-to techniques?
Yeah, well, a lot that what we're seeing is people are going out buying new tools, but they're not updating their techniques in the streets from the real world side of it. And I'm gonna bounce something off of what Mike said is on the rocker panels, like on one particular model we have, if you stay on the outside of that rocker panel, you'll blow through the rocker. The ram will blow through. If you go just inside that lip, it gets a lot more rigid and solid, and we have a solid push point. So it's just little dynamics like that is changing a lot of what we're seeing in the street. And to follow up on your question, it's just the material is just getting so hard. Jason and I talk a lot. We're not cutting the material. We're actually fracturing it. You hear the loud pops. Mm-hmm. And the harder the material, the louder the pops are. So, Jason, you got anything you want to add?
Well, first of all, I'm really excited to be here at FDIC, guys. I'm excited to be at the panel, and we're going to have some good times. We're going to be around after this, too, to answer any questions as well. To add to what Mike and Toots are saying, it's true. New cars no longer cut. They fracture and break. These are violent reactions that come from the cutting aspect of what we're doing. The body structures have changed, just like the chief said. Our techniques have to change and follow suit. If you guys have been watching the live demos of the F-150s here, you're seeing the guys make adjustments to their techniques that would once were easier techniques, but have become more challenging because of the materials. But it's all to the benefit of the occupants and the patients. And I prescribe to this when it comes to rescue. Rescue is the game of inches, angles, and an egress. If you let everything that you do and result in more space for your patient and your medic, you can't go wrong, regardless of the body or the structure. But when it comes to the EV side of things and the hybrid side of things, our techniques have to change. Mike will weigh in on this more. The floors on Teslas are absolutely no-fly zones. We do not crush or displace into the floor pans. We'll interfere with our batteries and obviously create a problem known as thermal runaway. We don't want to have one of those compounded by your extrication plan. So there's a lot of things to consider and a few topics to discuss up here today with you guys. And thanks to everybody who's here for joining us.
Yeah. And I'd like to add on to that. One thing with the new vehicles, a lot more vehicles are going to aluminum. So with aluminum, there's new tactics you have to know, especially on removing doors. Tesla vehicles, Model S, Model X, Model 3, and Model Y all have aluminum doors. Even though the 3 and Y is a steel vehicle and S and X is an all aluminum vehicle, they all share the aluminum doors. So tactics you're used to using on a full steel vehicle, you may need to adjust on that when trying to open those aluminum doors.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Well, let me dive a little deeper in that, because I learned an extrication technique from you guys that I thought was really unique. So tell me a little bit more about, in the demonstrations, why our demonstrators went to a tandem dash lift using both the ram and the spreader. I'd love to hear from all of you on this one. I heard some critique that, well, that puts the ram in the way, but tell us a little bit about how that helps you defeat that ultra high strength steel.
It's from my perspective and what I have seen in my experience, that is a must-have move now, dealing with these new body structures. The robustness, the structural integrity to these vehicles are unlike anything we've ever seen. You got to be rescue ready for this stuff. So to perform a dash relocation displacement, it now requires the use in tandem of both your spreaders and your rams. And I think it's a best practice because you're capturing your progress as you start your displacement operation. And this is really important because if like what Toot says, if the ram blows through the B pillar, bottom of the B, and now it's failed, and you've not already prepared to capture with the spreader on the dash relocation as you're talking about, well, now you've just dropped the dash back on your patient. And I don't believe, and I will never prescribe to, just reset and let the dash go up and down on your patient. That's unacceptable practice. So we want to capture our practice, our gains, as if you were doing a lifting operation, guys. If you're cribbing, you lift an inch, you crib an inch. The same rule applies in the dash displacement. The techniques we were using on the F-150 earlier, we actually had the ram vertically up into the roof rail because we know the structural integrity is there. We need that. So that's really important. And capturing with the spreaders and driving that whole body structure vertically up off our patient is optimal. Once we've got the space we need, spreaders captured the load, we can then remove our ram for better patient access, better patient care and assessment.
And that's what I was going to follow up is with the ram. If you hyperextend that roof line, and once we return the ram to remove it, we don't have it to come back into contact with our patient, exactly what Jason was saying there. So your ram's not going to be in the way. Don't just make 1 inch, give yourself maybe 3 or 4 inches. Then when you get the return, it doesn't come back into contact. So that's a lot of people see a ram or a spreader in a bad position. That's how you overcome that side of it.
Yeah, and to also build off of that, with the EV vehicles that are coming onto the market, many vehicles are going to a underside battery pack. So that means your floor is right above that battery pack. So that's why it's really critical where you place that ram when you're performing that dash roll, to be aware of there could potentially be a battery pack right underneath that floor, and that floor is going to be, thin gauge material, and you potentially could push right through it and then create a situation that's not real comfortable for everyone on the scene.
Absolutely. I'd like to shift gears a little bit here to address a topic I hear more and more as it relates to extrication rescue. I want to talk about speed of response, speed of rescue techniques, speed of the tools themselves, overall speed of patient packaging. So I direct this one to Chief Lee first. Chief, when you look at overall successful rescues where you package your patient promptly, what would you say are the leading contributors to that successful outcome?
Well, any type of extrication should be patient-driven, not ego-driven. And we see that, and we're getting a lot better in the rescue world where it's more patient-driven and not because my technique has always worked. So when you get a good team and everybody's clicking on the same cylinders, it's the best interest for the patient at all times. So taking the door, we kind of changed up some things at home. We used to try to make this big hole before we would free our patient. Now we go straight in. If the driver's peeing, we go in, blow that door off, immediately get the dash up. So now if our patient codes or medic says we've got to go, now they're not restricted with the dash down on their patient. We can come out. And if we have enough time, we go ahead and finish off and make a big hole. So we keep that spine in line so we don't injure them anymore. We don't want to create any more damage or injuries to our patients.
Yeah, to add to what Toots is saying, all rescue missions should be patient-driven and making adjustments on the fly. For those that may not be following Chief Leon through social media, he's always sharing some really fantastic road rescue techniques that he has proved and tested. So make sure you check that stuff out. And I just prescribed to what I said earlier. Rescue's a game of inches, angles, and an egress. And sometimes all you need is a few inches to get a foot out. We don't need to make these big elaborate holes or spaces to accomplish the mission. So that's kind of my opinion on that. And another thing when you're talking about the patient, and I got to talk about this because of the reaction to the vehicles that we're now seeing and the fragments of pieces. If you've been around the booth, you're seeing stuff ricocheting off this guarded wall. You must, if you're not doing it, guys, invest in some heart protection for yourself and the patient, especially during cutting operations. This is critical, right? We talk about the new cars don't cut, they fracture and break, and that is the gospel. So make sure we're getting those patient boards in, make sure we're getting the covers for our patient and our medics, and doing the best possible job that we can do to not further injure them, right? There's a grab and go scenario, and then there's times where we have times to do things right. Be confident, training to fail. Failing to train is training to fail. So always be training. For those that are maybe doing it once a year, hit the yard a few more times a year. If you can get access to late model vehicles, it's absolutely critical. I train all over the place. I take a 1992 whatever car with the power of my magic marker. I turn that into a 2021 Tesla Model 3. I write out the hazards, and your approach angles and tactics will be as if it was that type of car. So no pushing off the floors, peeling and peeking, assessing, and looking for hazards.
Yeah, and to go off of Jason, point out some things. Jason did have the chance to cut up a Tesla Model 3, so he knows the challenges that are built into that vehicle. Another thing with the challenges, there's also a lot of safety that gets built in these vehicles today as well. We're not only just keeping the basic steering wheel and passenger airbag, you get the side curtain airbags. You got, I call it the kidney bag, but it's the airbag built into the seat. You get the knee bags as well. And also an airbag that's going to be coming out on a lot of vehicles is going to be a center airbag that actually pops out in between the driver and passenger to keep them from bonking their heads together. It's a big thing coming up in the EU requirements over there. And those airbag systems will also be coming here to vehicles in the States. So a lot of new technology, safety technology out there to actually try to lessen those opportunities for cutting up the vehicles because they're doing all right.
Just one quick thing to add to your question, Mike, and I kind of went off the rails, which happens. I apologize. But when it comes to speed and control of the rescue, I mean, a lot of times we want to get in and do the job as quickly as we can. I like a quick cutter, but everything else when it comes to displacement, I like the control. I really do, because when you're working this close to somebody, which is why they're pinned and trapped to begin with, we have to exercise that control and due diligence in what we're doing and make sure that we do not interfere. And for those that cut, how quickly a cutting position go from here to here. You could trap a hand, you could strike your patient, you could interfere and create more problems, trap a tool, things of that nature. So you got to have control. Got to have control when you're doing this. And as the chief would say also, I heard a saying yesterday by a friend of mine, Tim Schott, having control, slow with control, but, also, understanding what you're doing. I'm probably messing up his line, but it was really good at the time. I don't know what to say. Horrible memory.
Let me add one thing. Have your tools and your team in a working position. Can I demonstrate something right quick? So Jason, come here and help me. Hold that for me.
Yeah.
Give me a hug first.
No, I'm not.
Give me a hug. You agitating, boy.
Turn around. Bring that mic to me. Yep. So if Jason's running the spreader, and I'm right back here with Jason. So Jason's running the spreader. I should be in contact with him to watch what he's doing. I don't need to be on the other side of the car, because if he starts getting ripping, all I need Jason to do is move to the side. Bam, I'll make a cut. I'm back up. Jason's finishing off the spread, or he stays out of the way and I keep going. So have that tool in a working position. Have your spreaders, your team, and everything in that working position. So that gives us a rapid extrication. It's going to free that patient up quicker, and it's going to be safer for us.
I knew he was going to try to get me up here on the stage. Why you got to agitate? We went all the way through this show. You already started.
We got to move forward. Sit down.
All right, gentlemen. I have one last question. I'd love it if all three of you would address with vehicle extrication. I've seen techniques change over the years, and sometimes maybe an over adherence to techniques that we all learned 10, 15, 20 years ago. So as you guys think about modern vehicle rescue challenges, what would you say some of the top misconceptions or misunderstandings about proper and safe technique? Are there any concerns you see out there of first responders maybe deploying a technique that's just really not appropriate with a modern vehicle? Anything come to mind?
If you want to go, I'll finish up.
Oh, okay. There's a few things that come to mind. One is identifying the type of vehicle that we're working on. So identification, number one. We're dealing with a gas vehicle, a hybrid vehicle, a electric vehicle. So that becomes part of your consideration for your rescue plan. That's important. One of the techniques that have been a bit of a go-to move for some folks have been a total side removal. Where the rescue team will perhaps identify a trapped driver. They'll start on the back door, force that open, lower B-pillar cut, rip it out, finish with a high B-pillar cut, and kind of drive the whole side of the car off. What we have seen with the stamping and the materials of these body structures, that technique will often fail more so now than 15, 20 years ago. So it's actually a technique I don't show anymore. It's a door, and a B-post. Now, I know there's some that say, oh, I can still do it. Great, you've practiced lots on it, but for the majority, it's a challenging technique to deliver. So I would be mindful of that singular technique moving forward, because that is a kind of a more standard thing, a side removal for better patient access and packaging. Toots, Chief?
Yeah, one of the hot button topics that we do a lot is the patient vehicle movement. We've all been taught for years. I've been in the fire service 32 years now. And when we first came in, it was don't move a vehicle with the patient inside of it. That is one of our go-to tactics. If we need to move a vehicle, we'll give up 5 minutes on the front end of the extrication to gain 30 or 40 minutes if it's a significant pin job. And we move vehicles consistently. We teach that program. And the biggest, we don't understand why we've been taught not to move it, but we will get a patient free, then we will put him and her in the back of an ambulance. And what is that ambulance doing? Moving down the road with the patient inside or a helicopter. So we're moving a vehicle inch by inch when we're creating that space, because the name of extrication is space, and that's what we're trying to do. So that's a hot topic, but we're going to do it because it's what's in the best interest of the patient.
Yeah. And with the EV vehicles, one of the big challenges when they go to the rescue is they realize it's an EV vehicle, and it's unfortunate. Many people think, oh, I can't touch this car, I'm going to get electrocuted. And the way vehicles are designed with all the safety systems, whether it's a Tesla, a GM, a Volkswagen, or whatever EV it is, those risks are being mitigated so that does not happen. So you can do that rescue operation you need to do. But again, it's super important to be aware that when you are removing parts of the vehicle and cutting into it, be aware there may be an orange high voltage cable nearby that you may not have known was there. So again, when you see that, then you need to pause for a minute and let's figure out a workaround. And again, we never want to cut a high voltage cable on a vehicle.
Yeah, agreed. And it just come back, just circling real quick, Mike, to the techniques. Where does all this come from? It would be bad never to mention this. I have to reach out to all my buddies, all the rescue specialists, throughout our territory, the Kirby Wilsons, the Jeff Gates, the Dalen Zartmans, all these guys, the Chief Tootley and others, where we're constantly peer reviewing and trying new stuff, because we're cutting cars every night, friends, through our training, through on the call, on the job. So we're always trying to proof test these things. And all that happens through our own network. We're learning stuff in the junkyard. We're working with the car manufacturers like Tesla and many others to help develop and adjust our techniques, because the only thing constant is change. And that's very important to understand that. And also information. There's a lot of misinformation out there. You got to find the right information. And that's what I got to say about that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. let me say, for those of you who would like further follow-up questions with any of our panelists, both Chief Lee and Jason DeFosse will be around the booth afterwards. And Mike, I think, will be migrating maybe back to the Tesla booth.
Yeah, we have a Tesla booth right over there. You just look for the Tesla T.
All right. So thank you, gentlemen, very much. We appreciate it. And with any questions, please feel free to seek out these gentlemen after this discussion. Thank you so much.
No, you
Thanks
listen.
for having
Thank you very much. Are we off? Listen.